Let's talk basic apologetics. Hi, I'm David, and welcome back to COC. This video is going to be different from all the videos I've done so far, because all the videos I've done heretofore have focused on one particular topic. In this video, we're going to talk about a wide range of topics. Now, as the title suggests, they all have to do with basic apologetics for the faith, but they're not focused on just one particular aspect of the faith. To be honest, I'm still kind of new to this social media channel stuff, so I'm kind of learning as I go along about what I'm supposed to do. And from what I've been told, if we have a channel, we're supposed to interact with our audience from time to time. So that's what I'm going to do today. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to try to answer some of the questions you have. In case you're not aware, this channel currently exists on 3 different platforms: Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. I normally don't allow comments on my videos because I can't stand trollers. I absolutely hate and despise the fact that people can hide behind a fake profile with a fake name and a fake picture and comment a bunch of crap. If you want to comment on my stuff, that's perfectly fine. But have the cojones to use your real name and a real picture of yourself. You see me. My name is David, and this is what I look like. I'm not hiding behind anything, and neither should you. With that in mind, if you have a question, please contact me. If you have a good question, especially one that stumps me, I'll try to include it in a future video. If it's bullcrap, you won't hear from me. So, having said all that, let's see what questions you have, and let's see if I can answer them. Do you have a speech impediment? I don't know, do I? Let's just say this, not that I know of. Are you married? I never got married, and I'll just leave it at that. I'm not convinced. Okay, that's not really a question, but I think I know what this person is trying to do. This is a play on words, since the name of this channel is Convinced of Christianity, and this person is saying that they're not convinced. Wow, I've never heard that before. Look, whoever you are, if you have an actual reason about why you're not convinced, feel free to contact me. Other than that, stop making me waste oxygen. Can a vegetarian eat animal crackers? What the crap kind of questions are these? Maybe I should have filtered these out a little bit better. But then again, these are the kind of questions I get, so maybe I'll just leave them in here. Yes, a vegetarian can eat animal crackers. You'll be just fine. Why do you believe in God? Okay, finally, thank God. A theological question. Okay, this question is actually the question. I did 2 whole videos on this when I first started this channel. In fact, I just saw a statistic the other day that said that this question, or something like it, why do people believe in God, is actually Googled 200 times per second all over the world. People are looking for answers. So why do we believe in God? Well, before I tell you why I believe in God, let me tell you 3 different ways that we as Christians can answer this question. Number 1, we can use personal reasons. Maybe there's a point in our life when we were destitute and we cried out to God for help. Maybe God sent us a sign, or maybe He healed us of something, or maybe He rescued us from a dangerous situation. Whatever the case is, maybe we were like the Apostle Paul and we had a road to Damascus conversion where we had a personal experience with God. Number 2, we can use philosophical reasons. God just makes sense. I think C.S. Lewis said it best. I'm paraphrasing here, but C.S. Lewis basically said that if you don't believe that an intelligent being created you and everything about you, including your mind, how can you trust what you believe or think about anything? Your mind is just a bunch of neurons that have aimlessly and randomly evolved over millions of years for apparently no purpose whatsoever. And this is what you put your trust in. We as people were created or designed, and if there's a design, there has to be a designer. Or number 3, we can use scientific reasons. This is all the fine-tuning and the conditions and constants in the universe, cosmological, teleological, and moral, that point to a creator. A number of years ago, there was a famous atheist named Antony Flew who became a theist. Now, he never became a Christian, at least that we know of, before he died. But in 2004, after he spent basically his whole adult life as an atheist, he publicly announced that he now believed in God. And he said one of the key factors in his conversion was DNA. He said that there's no way that something as complex and intricate as DNA could put itself together. There's just no way. He also later co-wrote a book called There Is a God: How the World's Most Notorious Atheist Changed His Mind. So there are 3 possible ways that we as Christians can answer the question, why to believe in God: personal, philosophical, or scientific reasons. For me, I normally use some combination of philosophical and scientific reasons. And I tell people that I believe in God based on reason and revelation. We as people have reason, and we can use this reason to see the ways that God has revealed himself. In other words, we have reason in order to see revelation. Now, you know it as well as I do. People will believe whatever they want to. But regardless, why we believe in God is the foundational question to our faith, and you and I need to know how to answer it. Who made God? Only created things have a creator, and God, by definition, is uncreated. God is eternal, which means that he is outside of space, time, and matter. He's what Aristotle called the uncaused first cause, or the unmoved mover. God is a locomotive that pulls the whole train of boxcars behind him, and nothing is pulling him. So in other words, to answer the question, nobody made God. God always has been, and God always will be. Is God a man? God isn't a man or a woman. God is beyond gender or sex. Now, Jesus was a man, so God became a man when he took on human form, but God is a spirit. And the Bible does refer to God in masculine ways, but things can be referred to as masculine or feminine and still not be a man or a woman. Here in America, we refer to the United States in feminine ways. Stand beside her and guide her, right? But America obviously isn't a woman. So the Bible does refer to God in masculine ways, but God is not a man. God is a spirit. If God is good, would a good God have allowed this to happen to me? Well, I don't know what this is that you're referring to, but it sounds like you've had something bad happen to you, and my heart goes out to you. It really does. This is a question that's pretty much plagued mankind since the beginning of time. Why do bad things happen to good people? And I wish I had an easy answer. One of the reasons this is hard to answer is because it involves having an eternal perspective, which only God has, versus having a temporary perspective, which is what you and I have. None of us are God, which means that none of us knows what God sees, and none of us knows what God knows. In some cases, we can see something good come out of something bad, but in other cases, we can only speculate, and we have to trust him. And there are several possible reasons why bad things happen. A lot of evil is simply caused by the fall, when Adam and Eve rebelled against God and sin entered the world. Because of this, humanity and the world are now broken. This is why we should actually be surprised when good things happen, because the default position of life is now bad. Another reason bad things happen is free will. God gives each and every single one of us free will, and we can use that free will to do good things or bad things. Now, God could stop all of us from doing bad things, but that would basically just turn us all into a bunch of mindless robots. God could also just destroy evil, which he will do one of these days. But if he destroyed it now, he'd basically have to destroy all of us. Another possible reason bad things happen is that the evil is preventing a greater bad or accomplishing a greater good. Maybe the suffering we go through is working for something better. And maybe that something better is that the bad thing is being used for our personal sanctification. Maybe God is using something to help us conform to be more like him. Don't forget this. The purpose of life isn't to be happy or peaceful or rich or successful or to be free of suffering. The purpose of life is to get us to heaven, which means that you and I always have to have the end in mind, and we have to learn how to live life backwards. If you give it to God, everything you go through helps get you to where you need to be. Think about this. You may have experienced a lot of evil and a lot of suffering in your life, but you've survived. You have survived every worst day and every worst experience of your life so far. Tough times don't last. Tough people do. Why does good God send people to hell? God doesn't send people to hell, my friend. In fact, God doesn't want anybody to go to hell. 1 Timothy chapter 2 says that God wants all people to be saved. But since you and I have free will, we can choose to go to hell. You and I are already destined to go to hell because of sin, but God gives us a way out. And you and I can either accept this way out, or we can reject it and continue on our way to hell. So it's not so much that God sends people to hell, it's that people reject God's offer to help them, and they decide to go there themselves. If God told you to kill someone, would you do it? If God told me to do anything, and it was beyond a shadow of a doubt that it was from God, I would do it. However, it's important to understand that God would never command us to sin, like in this case, kill an innocent person. God will never tell us to sin, so this question is kind of a non sequitur. Do you believe in miracles? Of course I do. Miracles happen in the Bible, and they still happen today too. But I would say this, miracles don't happen very often. I've heard people ask, how come miracles happen all the time in the Bible, but they don't happen anymore? I would challenge the premise of that question. First of all, miracles do still happen today. You might not have had a miracle happen to you, but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen to anybody. I mean, I've never had cancer, thank God, but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen to anybody. Also this, what makes you think miracles happened all the time in the Bible? You know how many miracles are in the Bible? I'll give you a hint. Around 160. About 160 miracles are recorded in the Bible. Now, the reason I say around 160 is because historians and scholars don't always agree on what constitutes a miracle in the Bible. Some of them say, well, I think that was a miracle. Others say, well, I don't think that was, but I think that was. And others say, well, I don't think that was, but I think that was. So there's not always agreement on what constitutes a miracle. And there are also several times in the Bible when there was more than one miracle happening at the same time. So do we count that as one big miracle, or do we count it as individual miracles? Anyway, the general consensus is that there are around 160 miracles recorded in the Bible. If you take that number and you plug it into the entire time span that the Bible covers, from Genesis to Revelation, that averages out to about one miracle every 25 years. Now, there were times when miracles happened more often than at other times. Moses, Elijah, Jesus, and the apostles. But there were also other times when hundreds of years went by and no miracles are recorded at all. So, the average for miracles happening in the Bible is about once every 25 years. I don't know what your definition of all the time is, but once every 25 years doesn't sound like all the time to me. I mean, if it was every 25 seconds or 25 minutes or 25 days or weeks or whatever, maybe that's all the time. But once every 25 years doesn't sound like all the time to me. That sounds more like Halley's Comet or some phenomena that we only catch a glimpse of every once in a while. People in the Bible were shocked by miracles as we are today. How come God doesn't answer some prayers? There's no such thing as an unanswered prayer, my friend. No is an answer. I have no idea where we came up with this idea that if God says no, that means he didn't answer us. That's just like if you ask your parents for something and they say no, and then you say, well, I don't think you actually exist now. No is an answer, and God always answers prayer with yes, no, or I've got a better idea. Always. I think it's also important to understand what prayer is. Prayer isn't treating God like some cosmic ATM machine where we just make withdrawals all the time. Prayer is asking for things, but prayer is also asking God what he wants from us. I had a lady ask me a number of years ago if we can change God's mind, and I said no, and then she said, then why pray? And I was kind of like, because that's not the only thing prayer is. We don't just ask God for things. And by the way, what are you trying to change God's mind about? You think you've got a better idea than God does about something? I'm sure he'd like to know that. Maybe instead of treating prayer like we're trying to change God's mind, maybe we should ask God to change our mind and conform our will to his, since his will is better. Anyway, there's no such thing as an unanswered prayer. No is an answer. Can God create a rock so heavy he can't lift? I've actually heard this argument since I was in college. Can God create a rock so heavy he can't lift it? This is meant to be a gotcha question because it's essentially saying that if God can create a rock he can't lift, then he's not God because there's something he can't do. He can't lift the rock. But if God can't create a rock he can't lift, then he's also not God because there's something he can't do. He can't create a rock he can't lift. Okay, to answer this, it's important for us to understand that God can do anything, but he can't do everything. Let that soak in a minute. God can do anything, but he can't do everything. Now, am I saying that there are things that God can't do? Absolutely. Like what? God can't lie. God can't steal. God can't commit adultery. God can't sin in any way, shape, or form. God also can't cease to exist, and God can't create a being stronger or more powerful than he is. And since we just talked about prayer, let me say this. God can't say yes to every prayer. I mean, if you have two people praying to win the lottery, they both can't win. They can both lose, but they both can't win. So it's important to understand that God can't do something that contradicts his nature, which means that God can't create a logical absurdity or a logical impossibility, like creating a one-sided triangle, or a stick with one end, or a rock so heavy he can't lift it. You know Jesus never really existed, right? Okay, this is the Jesus mythicism argument that Jesus was only a myth and didn't really exist. This argument needs to stop immediately. I did a video about this probably a year or so ago, and I used 9 ancient historical sources. All of them were non-Christian, and some of them were even anti-Christian, to prove that Jesus actually existed. Even staunch atheists today, like Richard Dawkins and Bill Maher, admit that Jesus was real. Now, they obviously don't believe he was who he said he was, which is God, but they at least know that Jesus was a real person. And who did Jesus claim to be? Jesus said he was God. The reason I'm bringing this up, this is another argument from the unbelieving crowd that needs to stop. Did Jesus claim to be God? Yes. Now, Jesus never said the exact words, I am God, at least that we know of, but he did claim to be God in other ways. Why else would the Jewish leaders of his day want to kill him for blasphemy? Jesus wasn't crucified because he got a parking ticket. Jesus was crucified because he claimed to be God. Period. If Jesus have a God, how come he didn't know when the world will end? How come he prayed to God? Okay, to answer this question, you have to understand two monumentally important Christian doctrines. The Incarnation, which is when God became a human being named Jesus, and the Trinity, which is the belief that God is one being, but that he exists in three persons, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. For the Incarnation, when God became a human named Jesus, God deliberately subjected himself to human limitations. Like what? Jesus got hungry. Jesus got tired. Jesus wept. In fact, Jesus might have even gotten sick from time to time. This is why Jesus wouldn't have known when the end of the world was going to be. In his finite human mind, his 3-pound human brain wouldn't have been able to grasp all the things of God, just like our human brains can't either. Now, regarding the Trinity, a metaphor I always like to use is a triangle. A triangle is one thing, but it has 3 different sides, similar to the Trinity. The Trinity is one thing, but he is 3 different persons. Now, this metaphor doesn't work 100%. No metaphor for the Trinity ever does. But it shows that there can be one thing with 3 different properties, as it were. And like I said, when it comes to the Trinity, we have one God existing as 3 different persons. If you understand this, you should be able to understand how one person can talk to or pray to the other. When God took his wrath out on Jesus on the cross, wasn't that child abuse? No, because Jesus went to the cross willingly. Jesus, as a fully grown adult man, knew exactly what he was doing and willingly went to the cross. Kind of like when the angel told the Virgin Mary that she was going to give birth to Jesus, and Mary said, "Be it done unto me according to thy word." The Virgin Mary was willing too. When Jesus died, did God die? This is a common Muslim argument. Actually, a couple of these are. This is another case where we have to understand the incarnation when God became a human being named Jesus. The human body Jesus was in died, but Jesus' spirit lived on. Kind of like when you and I die. Our mortal bodies die, but our souls or our spirits live on. Can we lose our salvation? No, we can never lose our salvation, but we can forfeit it or surrender it. In the church I grew up in, I was raised to believe in once saved, always saved. That would be really nice if it was true, but it's not. We can never lose our salvation, but we can give it up. You and I lose things all the time, right? We lose car keys, we lose phones, we lose receipts, but we don't lose salvation. Where is my salvation? I can't remember where I saw it last. Maybe I need to retrace my steps. Salvation doesn't work that way. We can never lose our salvation, but we can give it up, just like we can give up any other gift we receive. I don't support organized religion. Okay, that's not really a question, but that basically means that you support disorganized religion then. Because every single one of us is religious. It's just what we believe in worship that's different. I don't care who you are. But Adi-dadi, everybody who has ever lived on the face of this earth has had a worldview of some kind. You have some particular way that you look at life, religious or otherwise. And you can have a worldview that is logical and coherent, or you can have one that's all over the place. You can try to bake the cake by guessing, or you can use the cookbook and follow the directions. Religion is too narrow-minded. Why is that a bad thing? If I have a disease and the doctor tells me that there's only one cure for it, is that being narrow-minded? Yes, but the doctor's right. That's literally the only thing that will cure me. If I'm in a burning building and there's only one way to get out of there, is that being narrow-minded? Yes, but that one exit is literally the only way out of there. Being narrow-minded isn't always a bad thing. Kind of like a multiple choice test. There may be multiple choices to pick from, but there's only one right answer. I always get tickled when I hear people say that Christians are too narrow-minded or judgmental. Christians aren't supposed to judge. Bullcrap. God never tells us that we're not supposed to judge. God tells us how to judge. And he tells us never to judge hypocritically or self-righteously. We should always treat people with love. But love never automatically means approval. At least it shouldn't. And this is where judgment comes in. We judge people and things all the time. Now that I think about it, stop judging me for judging you. Religion is just wishful thinking. Then I sure wish the Bible would have left a lot of stuff out then. Like how much we all suck. How much we're all sinners. How much we're all broken. And I really wish there wasn't a hell. And I really wish Jesus hadn't told us to pick up our cross daily and follow him. If religion is just wishful thinking, I sure wish the Bible would have left a lot of this stuff out. Give me a reason why I should be interested. How can this make my life better? Well, I would say that you're already interested. You just don't know it. Like I just said, we're all religious. It's just what we believe in worship that's different. Now, as far as how this can make your life better, I would say because God can help you get through life. God can help you make sense of life because he tells you where you came from, why you're here, and where you're going. You can also have confidence in who you are because you know who you are. Why would I want to give something else control of my life? I don't know how old you are, friend, but I'm going to assume that you've lived long enough to realize that whenever you and I take matters into our own hands, we usually make a mess. I mean, look at what we've done to ourselves. Look what we've done to each other. Look what we've done to the planet. I know authority and obedience don't sound good in our day and age, but it can actually be kind of refreshing when we give up control of our lives to somebody who knows what they're doing. Why should I trust a religion that is full of hypocrites? You shouldn't. I wouldn't. But it's important to understand that it's not the religion or the faith that's hypocritical. It's the people who practice it. Unfortunately, hypocrisy is a human universal fault, and it's not unique to us. Hypocrisy is everywhere. However, that's still no excuse, and I do completely agree that there are way too many hypocrites in the faith. How do I know this? Because I'm one of them. Probably the biggest one around. But just because some of the followers are hypocrites, that doesn't mean that the founder is bad. If a song sounds bad, blame the singer who's singing it, not the songwriter. And why should we have to answer for every Christian who has ever lived? I would never expect anybody else to do that for anything. We've had some hypocrites, but we also had some rock stars too. And while we're at it, if you want to talk about hypocrisy, let's talk about atheism. Atheism is full of hypocrisy. How? Well, look at some of the things atheists say. There's no such thing as truth. Well, is that true? Because there's no such thing as truth, and what you just said isn't true either. Truth is unknowable. How do you know? There are no absolutes. Do you know that absolutely? Are you absolutely sure that there are no absolutes? I don't trust anything that I can't scientifically verify. Can you scientifically verify that? What you just said? I don't use arguments based on logic. I need evidence. Cool. What evidence do you have to support that? I only believe in the material or the natural world. Well, that very claim that you just made isn't material or natural. You still believe it? Do you see this? Atheism is so full of hypocrisy that it collapses under its own weight. But, like I said, I do agree that hypocrisy is a problem in the faith, and we all need to do better. I can have morality without God. No doubt about it. Atheists and even other religions can have morality and seeds of truth. There's no doubt, no question about that. But the problem is that they can't ground it in anything other than their personal opinion. I mean, what happens when two atheists disagree about something moral? Who wins? There has to be some transcendent referee or umpire to tell them who wins. Do you think we should stop legislating morality? Every law legislates morality. I mean, when you think about it, morality is actually the only thing that we legislate. Every single law says something is good and something is bad. So the question shouldn't be, should we stop legislating morality? The question should be, whose morality are we legislating? If you were born somewhere else, you wouldn't be a Christian. I could say the same thing about you. I mean, who knows for sure? But I could use the same argument against you. If you were born somewhere else, you wouldn't be what you are today either. Here's the deal, campers. There's no doubt and no question that our environment and our upbringing influence our worldview, whatever it is. But when it comes to the Christian faith, the history of the gospel kind of undermines the premise of this statement. The early Christians in the Roman Empire would definitely disagree that they were raised as Christians and lived in a Christian environment, so that's why they were Christians. Not to mention the fact that a lot of Christians around the world today who live in places like Afghanistan, China, Iran, wouldn't say that the reason they're Christians is because they live in a Christian country. Quite the contrary. Christianity is just one religion among many because there have been nearly 30,000 gods, but only yours actually exists. Seriously, you're practically an atheist because there's only one God you haven't ruled out yet. Question for the questioner here. Do you have a significant other? Let's assume that you do. If you have a significant other, you're practically single because look at all of these other people around the world that you've rejected. Billions and billions of people all around the world that you've ruled out. But you picked one person to be your significant other. So does this mean that you're practically single because there's only one person you haven't rejected yet? Like I said earlier, it doesn't matter how many different choices we have. Only one of them is right. If you read the New Testament, especially the gospel accounts, you'll see that one thing that distinguishes Christianity from other religions is that Christianity is a message. Something happened and the early believers wanted the whole world to know about it. Did you hear what just happened? This guy just rose from the dead. One of the major things that distinguishes our faith from all the other faiths in the world is that our faith is a message of good news. Isn't the Christianity a cult? Well, we might need to define our terms here first. What is a cult? I mean, if we're using cults like the Manson family or the People's Temple as examples, then no, the church is not a cult. Now, I do think that some individual churches are cults, to be perfectly honest, but the capital C church isn't a cult. For one thing, cults tend to be really innovative, and they change their beliefs and practices all the time. The Bible says that Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Now, there are churches that do change some things, but the core beliefs and practices stay the same. At least they should. Also this, cults are very secretive, but most churches are very open and transparent. I mean, you can visit churches in person if you want to, and if you can't do that, a lot of churches are on social media, and you can watch them online. That's never the case with cults. What's the difference between Christians who were martyred and other people who die for their belief? Okay, here's what I think this person is asking. Does martyrdom for the faith lend credibility to the faith? I mean, a lot of the early Christians died for the faith, and this person seems to be asking, well, people in other religions die for their faith too. What's the difference? Okay, for one thing, martyrs in other religions are dying based solely on their faith. The early Christian martyrs died based on their faith and based on the fact that they had seen Jesus risen from the dead. The first generation Christians had seen Jesus die, and then they had seen him alive, and they were willing to die for this. So they weren't just dying for their faith. They were also dying for an event that they had witnessed. Jesus risen from the dead. Where did the Bible come from? Ooh, wow, big question here. I've actually done a couple of videos on this before. The Bible ultimately came from God, but it wasn't like one day the clouds parted, this bright light shined down from heaven, and this book just magically floated down. And somebody happened to be walking by at the time, picked it up and said, hey, look, this must be from God. Let's do everything it says. That didn't happen. The Bible came to us through a process. And the short answer is that the books of the Bible were written, and then several church councils came together over several hundred years and put the Bible together. The Bible went through a very rigorous vetting process from different people in different places at different times. Do you take the Bible literally? Can we trust the Bible? God, another big question here. I've actually done some videos on this before too, but the short answer is, do I take the Bible literally? Yes. I take the Bible literally everywhere it intends to be taken literally. Don't forget this, the Bible isn't a book, it's a book of books. And the different books have different literary genres and styles. Some of them are literal and some of them aren't. So where the Bible wants to be taken literally, I take it literally, and where it doesn't want to be taken literally, I don't take it literally. Now, as far as can we trust the Bible? Yes, we have plenty of evidence today that establishes the Bible's credibility, historical and textual. We have archaeological discoveries, we have anecdotes from the early Christian martyrs, we have the Dead Sea Scrolls, we have over 20,000 manuscripts for the New Testament. Yes, we can trust the Bible. Why is the Old Testament God different from the New Testament God? The Old Testament God is mean, but the New Testament God seems nice. Have you read the book of Revelation? I wouldn't exactly say that the New Testament God is nice. God is loving, but he's also just. The Old Testament God and the New Testament God are the exact same God, but the Old Testament does seem to focus more on God's justice, and the New Testament seems to focus more on God's mercy. Like I said, the Bible isn't a book. It's a book of books, and the books are written by about 40 different people. Each one of them depicts God a little bit differently. So there you have it. These are some great questions, to be honest, and I hope and pray that I've answered them. You may disagree with some of my answers, or you may want me to tease out my answers a little bit more, or you may have more questions. No problem. I'll see what I can do. And as always, I hope you've enjoyed this because that's all I've got for now. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. We'll talk again soon, but before you go, take this with you.
It's all contrived. It's totally contrived. All religion is contrived.
Okay, I'm not standing out here asking you to believe in Catholicism or Protestantism. I'm standing out here saying, look at Jesus Christ. Examine him. He claimed to be more than a man. He claimed to be God in human form. He lived the type of life that it sounds like you're trying to live. So sounds like you really agree with Jesus when it comes to a lot of ethics.